Welcome everyone to today's webinar. A very warm welcome to this Social and Human Capital Coalition webinar. Hopefully you can all hear me well and see the screen. My name is Eva Zabe. I lead our work on the measurement and valuation of non-financial impacts at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is the WBCSD. And the WBCSD is really delighted to host the Social and Human Capital Coalition, and also delighted to be kicking off this second webinar of the coalition. There were many people who registered to this webinar, over 160, and it's really super that there are already 65 participants and the number keeps on going up. So thank you for joining, and we really hope that this webinar will be an opportunity to kick off the network part of the coalition, meaning this is an opportunity to exchange with all of you on the line what you're up to and how it can relate and connect to each other's work. And we look forward to hearing from you. Please let us know in the chat function if you would like to share something with us at the end of the call, whether it's an activity or a new finding or a piece of research, and we'll make sure we get to you at the end, and if not, in a follow-up email to everyone. So it really is an opportunity to exchange ideas in an open way, and please use the chat function as much as you can. All right, so it's really my pleasure to kick off this webinar, and we're going to cover three main elements. One is an update on the coalition and how far we've come in a relatively small amount of time since our launch in April. Then we're going to give you an update on the protocol, the draft protocol that was out for public consultation. That's now come to an end. We got a lot of really helpful comments from a wide range of stakeholders. And so what the process is as we build on from that, and then hopefully ending with quite a bit of time for some exchange and any other business from all of you on the line. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Matthew Watkins, who has been managing a lot of what's been going on in the coalition and in the public consultation, all of this supporting the activities of the new Social and Human Capital Protocol Coalition. So over to you, Matt, and thanks again for joining.
Okay, so thank you very much for that introduction, Eva, and good afternoon or good morning to everybody joining us today. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about the context of the coalition, with a focus on recent events and trends that we're starting to see and how this links to the activities of the coalition and to measurement and valuation of non-financial capital. So the first point that I wanted to raise is the link between ESG performance and the lower cost of capital. Something that we're starting to see examples of cropping up at the moment is our loans that are linked to ESG performance. And perhaps the three most widely known examples with Olam, with Danone, and with Wilmar International. And there are two reasons why I wanted to bring up this point. The first of which is to emphasize that a lower cost of capital is now becoming available based on ESG performance. Hence, it's more important than ever to really get a good grip on understanding and reporting ESG performance, including interactions with non-financial capital. The second point that I wanted to raise in relation to this is around why these financial institutions feel able to offer these loans at a discounted rate to organizations with good ESG performance. And really the key reason behind this is because organizations that perform well in terms of their ESG criteria are lower risk organizations for lenders to interact with. And because they're lower risk, this really emphasizes the improved financial performance of companies that have a significant emphasis on their ESG. And this is really emphasized in the recent BCG report, Total Societal Impact, a new lens for strategy, which came out at the end of last year. And I would definitely recommend everybody to have a look at. The next point I really wanted to mention is the preference of ESG fund shareholders. So I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with SAP, and in particular with the Chief Sustainability Officer of SAP. And this is one thing that he mentioned to me. It's not something that we can yet describe as a trend, but it's a point that I found very interesting. And he was telling us about how at SAP, they have a strong preference for ESG funds as shareholders. And this is really because ESG funds are invested for the long term, and this gives the company a lot more opportunity to focus on their long-term impact, and particularly including their sustainability impact, rather than having a very short-term focus on the next quarter results. So this is another example that I wanted to mention with you today. As we go further down the list, the next point on the list is in relation to ESG and risk. So WBCSD have been working with an organization called COSO. COSO is the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Fredway Commission, and have published guidance for enterprise risk management systems that is very, very widely used in multinational companies. WBCSD have been working with COSO to produce guidance for integrating ESG into enterprise risk management systems. And this really is a great opportunity for us to focus on how we can get non-financial capital information really embedded in companies' risk management systems. And I believe that the final guidance is due to be out a little bit later on this year, next month specifically. The last point I wanted to mention in relation to recent events, trends, and context is the increasing take-up of integrated thinking and reporting. So here at WBCSD, we do an annual survey of our member companies. And in the past 4 years, since 2014, we've seen an increase in the number of companies publishing integrated and combined reports from 22 to 33%. And of course, a good consideration of a company's social and human capital impacts and dependencies is really essential for companies' integrated thinking and reporting. So those are really the key areas that I wanted to mention, with a particular focus on how the coalition and how measurements of non-financial capital really relates to financial markets and investment trends. So from there, I just wanted to go on to a brief refresher about the coalition. So hopefully everybody on the line knows what the coalition is and what we're intending to do. But for those of you who are joining new today, we have a brief refresher. So the coalition is really a global multi-stakeholder collaboration that brings together leading initiatives and organizations, helping companies to recognize, measure, and value the importance of people and communities. It's a relatively new coalition being launched just earlier this year on the 17th of April. And you can find out a lot more details about the coalition on our website, the address of which is on the bottom of the screen. In terms of what it is that we're seeking to do, we're really working towards the vision that social and human capital will be consistently measured and valued across all organizations, but with a particular focus on helping corporations. And in order to get us to this point, we've set ourselves 4 main missions. The first of which is to mobilize and activate forward-thinking companies, which we're doing through collecting and publicizing case studies, through the launch of the protocol. The second of these missions is to socialize by building a network of new thinking and engagement, which we're working very hard to do through the establishment of the Social and Human Capital Coalition. The third mission is really to work towards increasing harmonization of this field through promoting the global acceptance of the protocol. And our last mission is really to work with partners to help capital markets to reward the more sustainable companies. And this is really working to ensure that companies are faced with more win-win decisions, where doing the right thing for society is also doing the right thing for the company through through the media of increased cost of capital and through increased share prices of more sustainable companies. So this has really been what we've been setting out to do. And I want to now come on to talk a little bit about the progress that we've made in establishing the governance structure for the coalition. So for those of us who joined the last webinar that we had for the coalition, then this diagram is not something new, but I wanted to bring it up to give you a quick refresher before we dive into some of the advancements we've made with setting up some of these particular groups. And I'd like to move on to focus on how we're getting on with setting up the board of the coalition, the progress that we've made with establishing the technical committee in particular. So we are very pleased to announce the establishment of the coalition board. We had our first board call in July of this year, and we can now announce the board composition. The board will be chaired by Peter Bakker, CEO of WBCSD. And we're very pleased to have had some really strong interest in taking a seat on the board. And those organizations and individuals that will be joining Peter initially will be Pavan Sukhdev from WWF International and from GIST Advisory. Will be Sharon Burrow from the International Trade Union Confederation, Cécile Duflot from Oxfam, France. We're continuing to ensure very strong links with our colleagues in the Natural Capital Coalition, with having Mark Goff, Executive Director of the Natural Capital Coalition, take a seat on our board. These are also joined by Cathy Seabrook from the Center of Safety and Health Sustainability, Jeremy Nichols, previously of Social Value International, and Martine Durand from the OECD. And again, it's fantastic to have Martine on board, really helping to ensure strong links between how companies are dealing with these issues and how countries are dealing with similar issues of measurement and valuation of non-financial capital at a national and supranational level. So I want to now move on to mention the technical committee for the coalition. Again, we've now convened the coalition technical committee and had our first technical committee call last month. As with the board, very pleased with the level of representation we have on the technical committee, and we have a great mix of people from private companies, from NGOs and international organizations, and also from academia taking seats on the technical committee. Now, as far as the technical committee roles go, these will be multifold, but for the time being, one of the key ways in which we're working with the technical committee is the committee members are really helping us deal with some of the more tricky issues that are coming out of the consultation on the protocol. And by tricky issues, we're really talking about issues where there's a differing view between different stakeholders, and we're talking particularly about areas where there's little or no experience in overcoming some of the issues that are commented on. So this is really, in the short term, a key area where the technical committee are helping us. Moving on to the next part in the governance structure, which is our team. We have Mike Wallace, who is Executive Director of the Coalition, joined by myself, Mark Graham, who will be handing over to shortly, and my colleague Eva from WBCSD, forming the management team of the Coalition. And in terms of coalition organizations, I am very happy to list the first organizations that have signed and returned their membership forms for the coalition. Of course, we work on a regular basis with a lot more organizations through than this, than are listed on the screen at the moment, for our interactions with the board and with various other organizations as well. But these are the first organizations to have returned their signed membership forms to us. And there's obviously a lot of you on the phone who are hopefully considering membership of the coalition. And I would very much encourage you to please download and return your membership form, which you can do at the link that's on the bottom of your screen at the moment. It's very quick to do. You can probably complete the form and return it by the time we finish the webinar today. And in terms of what we're asking in terms of contributions, this is actually relatively little. We're not asking for any financial contributions, and by way of other contributions, we're really asking coalition organizations to contribute in 3 specific ways: by subscribing to the coalition's vision, by defining how they can help us contribute towards that vision, and by agreeing to help further the aims of the coalition rather than competing against it. So please, if this is something that's of interest, then do download and return the coalition membership forms. One of the key benefits for coalition organizations will be really a chance to help drive the coalition's agenda as we go forward by telling us which projects are important to you and helping us progress with those projects. So I just have another couple of slides that I wanted to go through quickly before handing over to Mark to go through the update on the consultation. On this particular slide, I wanted to mention the fantastic appetite that we're seeing for coalition activities and measurement and valuation of non-financial capital. So thanks very much to any organizations that are on the line that have helped us to publicize coalition activities through the articles and through the newsletters that you see on your screen at the moment. We've reached hundreds of thousands of people through these particular communication activities, including a recent event, a recent article by Peter Backer, chair of our board, in the Board Agenda magazine. And the final point that I wanted to mention is around joint statements. Now, we issued a selection of 4 joint statements with key organizations, including Social Value International, the International Integrated Reporting Council, the Natural Capital Coalition, and the Roundtable for Product Social Metrics. This is really, I wanted to highlight, it is a particularly good example of the opportunity that the coalition gives us to work with a number of different organizations, and in order to define how we're going to collaborate in future. So that's, oh, I was going to say that's all I wanted to say, but in fact, I do have one more slide. So as I mentioned, coalition or potential coalition activities will be demand-driven based on what coalition organizations would like us to focus on. But these are some initial ideas that I would like to share with you based on our internal thinking and also based on the activities of our colleagues in the Natural Capital Coalition. So after our focus on wrapping up the public consultation and integrating the comments into the next version of the protocol, potential activities include work on sector-specific guidance, work on potential guidance for specific business roles, business functions, or specific decisions as well, that will potentially help us to get down to a more granular level of guidance. We, of course, intend on having regular open webinars and sharing experience of coalition organizations, and on collection and publication of case studies. So this is something that we're actually doing at the moment. So if anybody on the line has a case study that they would like us to develop and share on our website, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. There's also the potential for establishing specific working groups dealing with particular topics, including sustainability and financial reporting, including communication with investors, and any other areas that coalition organizations would like to focus on. Lastly, there's the opportunity to further what we've done through the joint statements and publish joint papers, showing how the protocol can potentially work in a harmonious way with guidance that other organizations have in this field. So that's really all I wanted to tell you for the time being. So we have a few minutes to open up for any questions or comments. So it would be great if you could please either get in touch with us on the chat function or potentially by unmuting your microphone to ask any questions. So I'm particularly interested in to know if you think we're going about this the right way, if you have any other ideas about areas of focus for the coalition, then please let us know now before I hand over to Mark Graham. So we're just giving everybody on the line just a couple of moments to get in touch with us, either via the chat function or via unmuting your microphone and speaking to us. And then I'm going to hand over to Coalition Technical Director Mark. Okay. In that case, we're presuming that everybody on the line is happy with. Oh, we have one question. Thanks, Kathleen, for your question. Do you have partnerships with academia at this point, or would you be interested? So we have, in terms of our interactions with academia, then we have a number of academics who sit on our technical committee, who are in a fantastic position to give us some guidance on addressing some of these tricky issues that we're facing in dealing with the comments from the public consultation. So that's one way that we currently interact with academia. The second potential way for us to work with academics is that the coalition is really open to all organizations to join, whether that be consultancies, whether it be private enterprises in industry, or academia as well. We'd certainly value your contribution through joining the coalition. Okay, thanks also for everybody else getting in touch with the chat. We have one question on the best way to contact us in order to share information about cases. The best way would be to contact myself, Matthew Watkins of WBCSD. We will, or info@socialcapital.org. We'll be putting up the full contact details at the end of the webinar today. Thanks also to Peter for commenting that you're happy with the idea for sector guides or for specific organization functions. It's good to get confirmation on this. And thanks, Brittany, for your question on interactions with accounting standards and accounting bodies. So at WBCSD, on our range of projects we have, we actually work quite closely with some of these accounting bodies. And we have engaged in a minor way with some of these organizations with our work on the Social and Human Capital Coalition. But I think there's certainly opportunity for us to take this further. Particularly in terms of maybe understanding a little bit better how this information on non-financial capital can work with management accounting practices.
And I think this is where the coalition itself can play a really helpful role in through its network. So for example, Accounting for Sustainability, and we have Helen on the line, has been really active in this work. We can leverage that network, and there will be others, the Big Four accounting firms on the board, and we can create those links with other accounting bodies as you suggested. So if that's something that's of interest, then that can be picked up by the coalition. So also, sorry, go ahead.
I have a question. This is Shaili Pradhan from Swiss Re, and I was very excited to see the draft of the protocol, which I read yesterday. And one thing that really struck me is that, you know, throughout the protocol, you give a sense of the process that needs to happen, but we still lack a definition of what social impact or social value really means and how to go about measuring them. So I was wondering whether you would in the future also work on that. On the first step, you say that, you know, it's really up to the organization to map for themselves across the value chain what the social issues that are the most material are. But is it really not possible for us to come up with a couple of indicators that are true across different sectors or organizations, the way it is for environment, for example? I mean, on the environment side, it's pretty clear and it's sort of a chosen indicator, the carbon emissions, but we don't have a similar indicator on the social side, which makes, even when you have a protocol, it makes it very uneven across different companies and organizations how social capital is measured. So is this something that you would take up, or is this too complicated?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I could take probably the rest of the webinar to answer the question fully, but in the short time we have available, I'll have a quick stab, and then very happy to talk further via email. So in terms of the definitions, we have the definitions up front in the protocol, and some of the feedback that we've had involves being a little bit more clear on some of these definitions. So this is something that we're working on for the version 2 of the protocol. We're also working to help align our definitions a little bit better with what other organizations are using in this area, particularly with the OECD. In terms of getting to specific indicators, then I think you're right that for some environmental indicators, they're easier. For example, carbon emissions is quite a straightforward one. But again, even in the environmental area, we're still really struggling in terms of comparable indicators in the field of biodiversity, for example. And I think we're actually at a similar stage with social and human capital, in that some indicators we could probably get reasonable agreement on. For example, if we're talking about hours of training, if we're talking about health and safety performance, but if we're talking about other areas of social and human capital performance, for example, in terms of impact on human rights, then some of these areas get a little bit more tricky. So what we're doing in the protocol is we are introducing a list of potential social and human capital topics, issues earlier on in the protocol to give some guidance on this area. But something that we're not looking to do within the protocol itself is get into the detail of specific metrics. We're really hoping that the protocol will provide guidance, and that we're very happy as part of the coalition to work with organizations on furthering the convergence of metrics, but that would not be intended to go into the protocol document. Mm-hmm. So Eva, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, Matt, because I think that we're on this journey, and that right now we're trying to develop this generally accepted step-by-step process, which is the protocol. And you're absolutely right that it won't give you comparable results yet, but that the direction we're going in is that building on this generally accepted process, we can move towards more generally accepted prescriptive methodologies and indicators that would then be meaningful and an effective way of reporting on performance. So this is absolutely the sort of thing that the coalition is going to be addressing, and it's great to have your input. You can also see on the chat that Mike Wallace, who's the executive director of the coalition, is starting to answer on the chat function. Just for the anecdote, he's actually sitting on a plane right now. I didn't know that was really possible using Wi-Fi in a Delta airline plane. So much for work-life balance, but there we go. All right, there were quite a few comments here, and I suggest that we move on, and we can come to them at the end if there are more. But it's super to have such engagement, and all of your comments are completely relevant. So we will move on.
So we are going to move on. Please just give me 1 second to make sure Mark is unmuted and able to talk to us. And then we're going to be handing over to Mark. Mark, I'm going to unmute you now.
Yes, it's just you have unmuted me. Thank you very much, Matt. And just picking up again on that question, there are links within the new protocol to, interesting enough, indicators at a country level. So, and it's as Eva said and Matt said, you know, actually having that perspective on the board But it's still this issue of how you translate at an aggregate level, consistent use of indicators, let's say around inequality, that can then translate in terms of the relationship between what you are undertaking and the impacts it might have. So I think the other element that we are, again, are working on is issues, but also identifying likely stakeholders as well, so that you will be able to see against issues the areas of stakeholders that are most likely to be, you would have to make a judgment about materiality, but we are endeavouring to give guidance around the stakeholder groups that are likely to be impacted. But I shall move swiftly on in terms of the public consultation. So why did we carry out a public consultation? Essentially benefits from both sides. So from contributors, it was clearly to help shape the protocol, but address their needs, to be recognised as a contributor, and we're very keen to publicise those that have been involved in this process and also wish to become members. And then again, the spirit of the coalition is collaboration, and it's collaboration with both peers and also relevant experts on specific issues. For us, it was a great means of initial engagement. Certainly we are heart and soul looking at wider perspectives, and hence the mix in terms of board, technical committee, and hopefully overall membership. And in terms of conferring ownership of the protocol as it develops, it's not us that is writing this, it's you engaging with us to best meet your collective needs. And again, that point around rigor and acceptance and widening awareness and uptake, because if we are going to solve some of the more critical issues in terms of use, measurement, and management, it is raising awareness, it is actually sharing information and project data, and is actually ensuring that there is a degree of consistency in the approaches that are adopted. So in terms of the kind of timeline, just very briefly, we started this in 2016, essentially looking at best practice from around 20 companies. We reviewed and released a protocol in quarter 4 of 2017. We launched it for public consultation, which closed in July. And again, thanks very much for those on the call that have contributed. And I say with that with a smile on my face, because there's a significant amount of contributions which Matt, Ava, myself, and Mike are essentially reviewing, evaluating, and considering the best means by which to update and, far more importantly, improve the protocol. As Matt suggested, we are using the technical committee to resolve some of the more key and critical issues, and we will be providing a report on the resolution of comments, aiming to do that this year. And in terms of the actual sign-off of the process, I'm overseeing the current revisions. Mike will be reviewing a final version for sign-off by the production board, and we are currently aiming to launch the updated protocol in quarter 1 of 2019. The next slide essentially just gives you an indication of the number of people who registered, the comments that we received, but also recognizing that actually we've got a lot of contributions from various workshops that we held in various locations, and we are getting ongoing comments, and clearly a comment that was raised just now is one that we will capture and respond to as part of the update to the protocol. In terms of participation, if you break it down by geography and you break it down by sector, we feel relatively comfortable about the representative nature of those that have commented to date. And in terms of consultation outcomes, having viewed all of them with Matt, we essentially take the view that around the vast majority of them are extremely positive and focused on areas of enhancement. So those areas of enhancement are around actually strategic intent, and recognizing that, as Matt said, it's about companies and the way that they operate and manage themselves, but it's also about actually addressing key societal well-being issues, such as inequality, diversity, inclusion, and poverty. And we are flagging those particular issues, and in certain cases, helping you through the process relative to those specific issues. Again, I'm very pleased to hear you thought that the process was clear, but again, comments around, well, maybe a decision tree, a simple decision tree that would, go, no go in terms of the process or routes that you might wish to take. Giving some degree of comfort around standards of evidence, and actually recognizing that the landscape is changing in terms of data, and how data can be, ethically and positively used to measure impact. Technical guidance, various areas, so important around baselining, attribution, and timescales. Interpretation, particularly in terms of trade-offs, and practical examples. So hence, both Matt's point that he raised, I think it's on our website, we genuinely are looking for people to provide and share examples of impact measurement and how that has influenced their organizations. And then the final one, which we define as internalization, and essentially it's how do you convince others in your organization to adopt the protocol, the guidance in the protocol, and actually make the types of changes that could be delivered through the strategic intent and the issues that represents. Finally, in terms of the issues, well, interestingly, definitions is one of them, and then actually recognizing we've captured it in terms of social and human capital issues, and as Ava and Matt explained, that there are levels that you can go to. Having consistency and conformity in indicators is something that we hope this process will actually engender. The conception model, which is causing me to stay up at night, which is essentially that point about internalization, readability, actually engaging with the a new reader, what we are looking at in terms of the interdependencies between social, human, and natural capital, and how to capture that graphically. And then finally, and again, as recognition of our objectives are not isolated, we certainly in the longer term would see the protocols and the capitals, well, the capitals and protocols coming together. So being a bit clearer in both the alignment with the natural protocol and actually consistency in terms of the steps in both protocols. So I think that is the end of my section.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So as we had with the end of the first section of the webinar, we now have a couple of minutes where we would be very happy to answer any questions regarding the public consultation on the protocol, those who've participated, and the resolution of any of the key issues that Mark's gone through. So let's pause for any comments or questions. Okay, in that case, I suggest we move on. If anybody is still typing on the chat function, then please continue to do so, and we'll come back for any questions just before we conclude everything today. But for the time being, let's move on. We now want to go onto the wrap-up and AOB, and hand back to Eva to take us through this.
All right, great, and thanks so much, everyone in the chat function. We'll get back to your comments. We just have this one slide, essentially, just to recap the engagement opportunities, and then let's go through some of the questions and comments in the chat function. So you can all join the coalition. It's free of charge, and essentially it's just to make sure that you're included in this open network, multi-stakeholder network. As we've mentioned before, we're looking forward to receiving any more case studies. We also got another link in the chat function around projects that matter. So there are other platforms that we can connect with, which is great. If you have proposals, and we already have in the chat function, around the different sector approaches like cement. Ooh, I didn't know that background noise. And then in terms of a number of events that are coming up, please let us know if there are events that we should be aware of as the coalition, but also the ones that we'll be at are listed on the screen now. So we've got the 6th International Conference on Social Life Cycle Assessment, where we'll be meeting a number of people like Mark Goodcoop on the line, who we've been working with, and others. Then in October, the Bloomberg Sustainable Business Summit, where Mike Wallace, who's the executive director of the coalition, will be speaking. And then also the Sustainable Brands New Metrics, where Mike will also be speaking, and probably a number of you will be there. So just please let us know if you're going to be at these events as well, because it's a great time to connect. And also let us know if there are other events we should be at. So with that, we're now going to go to the last part of this call, which is an open forum for you to share some of the related activities. But before we do that, I realize there may be some questions that have come up that we haven't focused on. So Mark Goodcoop has clarified that in this meeting next week in Italy on social life cycle, there'll be a number of discussions around the product social metrics handbook with a well-defined list of indicators of social topics that can be leveraged. And also in parallel, there were a few exchanges on the chat function which are really important around what Mike was talking about, the human capital metrics that have been led out of Harvard. So human capital metrics for investors with Larry Bieferman and Aaron Bernstein. So they're on our technical committee, and that's something that's great to leverage. Okay, I've also noted some earlier comments that were around indigenous experts, academia, accounting bodies, standard setters like ISO, thinking about, the sector approaches. But we're going to be capturing all of these comments and questions, and we will, then also feed back additional information to the group. But we would like to, we have a couple of people on the line who we'd like to, who are able to share some of their activities, and maybe others can then follow briefly. So we have Cathy Seabrook from the Center for Safety and Health Sustainability, who is also on the board of the new coalition. And it would be great in just a few minutes, Cathy, if you could share what you're doing and also how it relates to the coalition's work.
That would be great. Let me know when you'd like me to share that.
Right now would be great. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ava. I'm Cathy Seabrook, and I'm with the Center for Safety and Health Sustainability. And we've really aligned with the Social Human Capital Coalition and are delighted to be a part of the board. Because of alignment and collaboration around this measurement and value creation relative to human capital. From our perspective, our strategic intent, since we were formed in 2010, which our base is about 100,000 safety and health professionals, subject matter experts in the area of occupational health and safety.
I'm so sorry, Cathy. I think a little technical glitch here. We'll try and unmute you again. The line was a little bit crackly. I don't know if others on the line also had difficulty listening. We've got the beginning bit. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. So I'm so sorry about that.
No worries. But our strategic intent is really aligned, and that's why we're happy to collaborate with the Social Human Capital Coalition. We're looking at consistent, comparable, investor-grade reporting, basically reporting that reflects a company's long-term value within this context of human capital. And at the end of the day, we are looking at how occupational health and safety decision-making actually can be better. And that's decision-making for investors, for companies, and the company's customers. So just really briefly, we also have been very involved with Harvard doing some baseline studies on what current reporting is like. I'll send a link to the outcomes, but the reporting around occupational health and safety. We've also brought together with Harvard, through Globe in Vancouver in 2018, our human capital workshops. We brought together stakeholders such as SASB, such as DRI, such as IIRC, as well as the investment community, and companies that are sustainable companies, to really talk about how human capital, how this concept of if a worker, a person within an organization is injured or has ill health, they can't contribute. And at the end of the day, that has an impact on an organization's value. So this is sort of the area. So for us, April 3rd, L'Oreal in Paris is looking to host our next human capital workshop. That's April 3rd of next year. I'll get out information to everyone. But we've, again, had companies from around the world and investors from around the world that have come together to really talk about this issue around safety and health, as we all have come to understand. And Mike Wallace had put Larry and Aaron's research in identifying definition around human capital, which includes the health and safety of people as well as communities. So I'll be providing a few more bits of information via links. So thank you very much, Eva.
Thanks so much, Cathy. And maybe just as you're on in the chat function to everyone, you might just send the link. It's Investor Network. There's been so much focus on these metrics, occupational health and safety, and also 3rd of April in Paris that probably many people in the group will be interested to hear about. So if you could jot that down, we'll make sure it's also in the follow-up notes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And also another person who's happy to share what they're up to, so very happy to give the floor to, is Christina Arias Echevarria from Grupo Argos. So Grupo Argos is a Colombian conglomerate that works in the cement industry as well as energy and infrastructure. And so, Christina, are you on the line? Let's see if I need to unmute you. Uh-huh.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yes, perfect, Christina. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So yes, I'm Christina Arias. I'm head of sustainability for Grupo Argos, as you were mentioning. This is a holding company with strategic investments in infrastructure and also some portfolio investments. So we work in 18 countries, and just so you have an idea, we manage around 16 billion USD in assets under management. And so we have investments in cement, energy, and concessions. So in terms of impact assessments, what we're doing is first we're conducting individual impact assessments, which we have called value-added statements. Some of you may have heard about one of our VAS, or value-added statements, for the cement business. And so we are doing this at the subsidiary level. We have the one for cement is publicly available. I can send you the link through the chat. I'll do it just now. Okay, there it goes. And so we have done this one for 3 years, and then for 2018, we're looking to have one for the cement, one for the energy business, which is Celsia, and one for Odinsa, which is the concessions business. So for the cement one, we have done the assessment for 11 externalities. And at the end, what we're looking to have is a consolidated VAS, or value-added statement, for the group level. And start working on 3 applications. We have focused on 3 applications, which is 1, better decision-making in several ways, 2, enhanced risk assessment, and 3, enhanced transparency. So after this, what we're looking to have also is to set up a model that allows us to conduct responsible investments in order for us to integrate ESG issues in an objective way into our due diligence processes. And of course, we are looking forward to working very closely with the coalition on these initiatives. Our technical our technical team at Cementos Argos, which is the subsidiary who has done the value-added statement for the 3 past years, sits also on the technical committee of the coalition. So we are very much engaged with the initiative.
Super, thank you so much, Christina. And it's also really interesting to see in the cement sector some parallel or equivalent, similar efforts around value-added statements or integrated profit and loss that are taking place. And so some of that consistency is, we're starting to see on the horizon, I suppose, some of that consistency emerging at a sector level. But thank you so much for sharing. There are a number of other people on the line, or Matt, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, and we have the Argos case study available on the Social and Human Capital Coalition website, if anybody is interested in further information there. So again, just to say, it's fantastic to hear from a couple of organizations involved with the coalition. If anybody else is interested in sharing those their activities, then we're very happy to do so on the website through case studies and potentially through further calls. So thanks, Eva.
Great, and we have 4 minutes left. So if nobody else jumps out and takes the floor, I'm going to pick on someone. So please unmute your line if you wanted to just jump in now and just give a minute on what activities you're doing and how they relate to the coalition's work.
Evie, you'd asked me at the start. It's David Lawrence.
David, super. You see, my memory fails me. Of course, David.
That's all right. It's all right. Together we get there. You wanted me to give a couple of quick minutes on what we've been doing in the FMCG sector with impact measurement, and I'm interested to see how we will integrate this into the protocol, because we're an organisation, a collaborative initiative of 40-odd companies, including all the big brand names that you recognise: Coke, Pepsi, Unilever, Nestle, Mars, etc., who are looking to make a positive impact on workers' lives in our common supply chains. And having made that statement of purpose, we then thought, well, how do we actually measure whether we're having an impact? So started a piece of work which over the last couple of years has produced 3 simple areas where we think, starting from a worker perspective, we want to measure this. And the piece of research basically came out with saying, at the end of every day, a worker wants to go home safely with a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, and knowing that they've been respected in their place of work. So how do we develop some metrics around that? And we wanted to keep it to a minimum, so we said ideally less than 10. And what we've done is developed and piloted those to be complementary to the standard social audit process for use in our assessment of supplies in our supply chains, which we're now increasingly start to asking our members to roll out and use, so that we get not just what the auditors think, but actually some input of what actually workers think using a lot of the worker voice technology, be it Alula, Labour Voices, Labour Link, those sort of solutions, to bring in the worker opinion on how they feel they're being treated and what their sort of levels of wellness are, and as part of their place of work, and trying to build that into our social impact work. So really, in the time available, just wanted to share a little bit of that. I'm very happy to offer up some time to build that into a case study so that members can share that, because I think it's an interesting and slightly different approach to human capital and impact assessment.
Thanks so much, and a very practical approach as well. So could you just jot in the chat to everyone just the link to find out more? That would be really helpful. Thanks so much, David. And we're going to squeeze one more in, because I did see that Caroline Rees from Shift is on the line. Caroline is the head of this business and human rights really active effort. And Caroline, if it's okay, if you don't mind, just me picking on you completely, but it's such an important piece. Is there any chance that you can share a few words on your work, please? You should be able to unmute. Let's see.
Hi, did that work?
Yes, hi Caroline. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity, and wonderful to follow on from David and the fantastic work that's being done there around worker voice. Yeah. So Shift looks specifically, that's my organisation. We're a non-profit working specifically on business and human rights, and from earlier this year, and with some wonderful support from Norges Bank Investment Management, we've been starting up a 3-year project called the Valuing Respect Project that aims to sort of ask what has been for a long time one of the big questions in the business and human rights space, which is precisely that: how do we get a better handle on evaluating what's working and what isn't, right? Of the many now initiatives and efforts across companies and others around tackling risks to human rights in supply chains and in operations. So it's really very much, I think, in a similar vein to yourselves, and I think very complementarily, it's a collaborative platform. We are building up bodies of research, learning from other domains, like we've heard from health and safety already, ethics, compliance, and so forth, looking from the levels of rights respecting culture, and how do we think about real indicators of the companies that are building rights respecting cultures, through to that affected stakeholder perspective. So it's so great to hear about the work that David has been doing with AIM Progress, and looking at a lot of the other innovations, some of them community-based, around bringing affected stakeholder perspective into the evaluation process, looking also at how we understand not just the fact of something like a human rights due diligence process, as it's called through the UN guiding principles, through the OECD standards, but what are the better indicators of the quality of process, effectiveness of process, what can we learn from all the work that's been going on, and also looking distinctly at outcomes for people from these interventions and outcomes for the business itself, and tying it back to those business metrics. So a whole host of research domains, a series of consultations. We were just in Singapore last week. I've been in London and in New York recently, Johannesburg in November, for multi-stakeholder conversations around this. And I'd be happy launching the project portal. We've been a little bit delayed on that, but I'd be happy to circulate. I think it'll be up next week as soon as that's there, with what will be a growing number of research and consultation readouts from that. And we're very, very keen to connect with everything the coalition's doing, and seeing how we can support, feed in, learn from, and so forth.
Oh, super. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Caroline. And we can amplify the message as it comes out next week, and the engagement opportunities for Shift's work, but also for everyone on the line. And that's exactly what the coalition is trying to do. I think we've had a super rich exchange today, and it just shows how much expertise and experience there is, how broad, how challenging it is. But I think collectively, hopefully the coalition can act as this real network to continue to share We really look forward to working with all of you in the future. Here are our contact details. Please don't hesitate to get in touch, and please look out for an update after this webinar, and we'll be in touch. So thank you all so much again. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Matt, for your updates, and we'll be in touch. Bye, everyone.